It's been 90 days since Steven Wright was elected chairman of the Dorchester County Republican Party. Today, I talk one-on-one with him about his future plans for the party for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Steven Wright, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Good morning, Quintin. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. And first and foremost, congratulations on becoming the chairman of the Dorchester County Republican Party.
I greatly appreciate that, Quintin.
You're very welcome. From the time that you were voted into right now, who is Steven Wright as chairman?
Well, we've been very busy. In fact, the 25th of this month will be 90 days since I was elected chairman of the Dorchester County Republican Party at our 2021 county convention. And I would describe those 90 days as 90 days of action and 90 days of achievement. We've been doing a lot of hard work. I've been very blessed by the leadership we have throughout the county party, and everyone has come together united after the convention, even though we had a very contentious race, and we're all working in one direction, one positive direction, to ensure we make the most impact on the 2022 midterm elections.
Does the Dorchester County Republican Party communicates?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
What does the Dorchester County Republican Party communicates?
Well, I think what we communicate, of course, first and foremost, are our platform of limited government, lower taxes, and conservative values. And that's really something that I've worked to improve since I was elected chair. We are working right now on a digital plan to get our message out, both on social media and online. And we want to make more people aware of what we believe and why we believe it, and then get those people that whose values align with ours, get them out to the polls to support our Republican candidates up and down the ticket in 2022.
How does the Dorchester County Republican Party actualizes and translates those ideas into multiple arenas to its advocates, potential candidates, and of course the broader public?
Well, Quintin, that's a great question. Right now, last week, what we did is we organized all of our committees. And essentially what our committees do is that's where the work is done. That's where they work and focus on a specific area of the party. So, for instance, our Faith Outreach Committee, a couple of weeks ago, they had a pastor's luncheon where they invited pastors, and they, wanted to make pastors aware of the values of our party, the values we stand for, and why it's important that they be engaged in the arena. Another thing that we're doing, of course, is next month on August 28th, we are having our first annual Faith, Family, and Freedom Dinner, where we are hosting Governor McMaster, Attorney General Wilson, and Congresswoman Mace. We have some other big names that we expect to be confirmed next month, but those are the types of things that we're doing to communicate our message, to reach out directly to voters. We have a communications committee that is, working to get the word out about what we believe and why we believe it. We have a legislative committee that's working hand in hand with our legislators, attempting to craft legislation to resolve issues that we see in our state. And we're trying to be positive people and making a positive difference for our community and for our country.
Let me ask you, Steven, what is the historical survey of Republican candidates' performance in local, state, and national elections?
So in South Carolina in 2020, Republicans did better than they've ever done before. And I believe the reason for that is because of the focus and attention that the United States Senate race got. If you recall, the Democrat candidate for Senate, Jamie Harrison, who is now the chairman of the Democrat National Committee, he raised over $150 million. And the Democrats poured everything they could into that race to take out Senator Graham. So in 2020, our state party adopted a 2020 victory program, which we're going to attempt to replicate next year. And essentially what I saw firsthand was the state party and local parties working together like I've never seen them do before. What that allowed us to do was prioritize retaking the 1st Congressional District, which allowed Representative Mace to win that race. We, of course, kept our Senate, our United States Senator, Lindsey Graham. And across the state, we picked up state Senate seats and state House seats, which allowed Republicans to cement the largest Republican majority in over 140 years. So historically in South Carolina, we've been a red state. This past cycle, we expanded our conservative majority in the legislature and across the state and countywide offices. Nationally, we've got some work to do. We, of course, number one, we have to ensure that we recruit good candidates who can win congressional races so we can take back the House. We've got to do the same in the Senate. And then in 3 years, we've got to make sure that we nominate someone who can win the general election and get our country back on track.
And I skipped over it, and I should go back to communications. But let me ask you this. How do you underpin, clarify, and focus all other strategic areas by ensuring that not only the messages, but also the strategies for communicating those messages are actually consistent?
Well, Quintin, that's a really great question. I think really what we've got to do as a party, and this is one thing that the state party does very effectively, is we have to communicate over all the different communication channels. And we also have to understand who our voters are and who we're targeting. There's certain voters that certain issues matter more to than others. So by collecting data on those voters, we need to make sure that we make them aware and inform them of where we stand on the issues that matter to them. So we do that in a variety of ways. Number one, of course, on social media, running ads on social media, trying to improve our presence on social media. Of course, we can do digital ads online. So when folks are looking on Google or YouTube, an ad pops up. And then, of course, you have the opportunity to send direct mail to voters. Some folks believe that direct mail isn't effective, but from my time in politics, anytime I've worked with a candidate who has done direct mail, the chances of them winning has increased because we're communicating directly to the voters and highlighting the platform and the issues that matter to us and we believe would matter to the voter.
And what regular and predictable revenue streams will you actually use to adequately execute your mission and to plan and invest for the future?
Well, Quintin, that's a really good question, and I appreciate it because the Republican Party in Dorchester County, has not held a fundraiser in over 7 years. So our fundraiser next month will be the first fundraiser in 7 years. And really what we're going to do are a couple of things. Number one, when I ran on us establishing a fundraiser. I ran on us establishing a physical office during election season. Dorchester County, geographically and traffic, takes us a while to get to Charleston, and that's normally where the GOP office is. So, number one, what we'd like to utilize these funds for is an office. Establish an office with people that can volunteer in it, have office hours where our candidates can store their supplies, where our volunteers can come do phone banking and have meetings. Second, what we would like to do is, of course, invest in our candidates. Whenever we have a Republican that is facing a Democrat, we want to ensure that they understand that they have the full financial support and the manpower of the Republican Party in Dorchester County to help them push them over the edge. So by investing in them, whether it's a direct check to them or whether it's doing mail pieces for them or any other way in which we can communicate what they believe and why they believe it, that's a priority of ours, and that's exactly why I've prioritized holding a fundraiser so that we can have the resources required to execute all of our goals and objectives in the 2022 election cycle.
And let me continue and ask you this. How are you cultivating a donor base and infrastructure to support continuous fundraising, which will result in a far more productive and sustainable county party structure that can advocate, educate, and mobilize residents on a regular basis?
Quintin, that's a really good question. Really, we have what I've done is I've established a fundraising committee. And what that committee is doing is it's a diverse group of folks who have different social circles throughout the county, and they're reaching out to people who they know and trust and asking them to support the Republican Party. That's the first thing we have to do. The second thing that I'm working to do is ensure that we increase our dues-paying members so that we have the revenues and the monies that are coming in, make sure that we are utilizing them in the most fiscally responsible way. Really, as a Republican Party, the state party's done this. They have a direct mail campaign where they send people requests for donations in the mail. Some county parties do that. That's certainly something we're going to explore. When it comes to raising money and ensuring we have adequate resources to execute our goals and objectives, we will leave nothing on the field, and we're going to explore every option possible.
And how do you develop and fund, for instance, an annual budget that will ensure a robust presence in the community?
Absolutely. So one of the things that I'm going to outline at our executive committee meeting is the need for what I'm going to establish as a Ways and Means Committee. And the purpose of that committee is for all of our committees, I've requested that they submit a budget to us, a quarterly budget, and then that budget will go through the Ways and Means Committee, and then we bring it to the executive committee for final approval. So that's really the process that we're setting up. We're going to have a diverse group of folks on that committee with financial background, with political background, and really what we want to do is we want to make sure that every penny that is given to the Dorchester County Republican Party is spent in the most effective way, getting out our message and delivering results for both the party and our candidates up and down the ticket.
How are you actually outlining the party's, projected financial incomes and expenses?
What we're doing, number one, is we do have that fundraiser coming up in August. But what I said, as I just previously stated, we're going to have that Ways and Means Committee. They're going to kind of be the oversight committee of the funds that we collect, and they're going to be the ones that really make the decision as to how we spend those funds. I believe there needs to be a process. There needs to be checks and balances to ensure that we are transparent in the way we spend our money. But what we'll do is, like I said, the committees and anyone that wants to submit a request for our support, they'll go through that committee. That committee will review that request. They will vet the request, and they will determine the necessary funding required to achieve that objective. And then they'll bring it to the full executive committee, which I expect by then it will have the support it requires to be successful.
And Stephen, let me ask you, how do you start an audit of current financial resources and budgetary systems?
I'm sorry, can you repeat your question?
Yes, sir. How have you actually started an audit of current financial resources and budgetary systems?
So typically in the Dorchester County Republican Party and historically in parties across the state is an audit only occurs whenever a new treasurer is selected. One of the things that I've done is I've allowed our current treasurer to continue serving. I think he's done a very good job. And so we do have an audit committee. We do expect there to be an annual audit or a biannual audit. But most of the time, an audit occurs whenever a new treasurer is selected by the chairman. Our current treasurer was selected, I believe it was in February or March. And so there hasn't been enough time to require an audit. But the audit committee will be tasked with doing a biannual or an annual audit to ensure that all of our monies are being spent appropriately.
And as you know, you're a young man yourself, but where do you actually increase young Republican voters in Dorchester County?
Well, that's a really great question, Quintin. I believe we do that by a couple of ways. Number one, I established a Young Republican Outreach Committee. And essentially the purpose of that committee is to directly reach out to young people and get them more involved in the party. Second, we're going to partner with the Young Republicans. Joe Bowers is the current chairman of the Charleston Young Republicans. We recently established a chapter of Dorchester and Berkeley Young Republicans. We're going to work hand in hand with those committees and with those organizations to ensure we increase the amount of people that are involved in the party. But I'd like to take it a step further. I want to ensure that people that are in high school are involved in the Republican Party. So I'm working to build relationships within our school district to see if we can form some type of club, maybe the high school Republican Club or teenage Republican Club, because we do need to make sure that we are bringing more young people into the party because we are the future, and there's no greater time to really take over the party than right now. We need to ensure that we are constantly reaching out to young people and bringing them in.
And how are you actually developing a volunteer management plan to determine the necessary systems and processes to actually recruit, train, and manage those volunteers?
That's a really good question, Quintin. So what we're doing right now is we are establishing, all of our committees across the board have a list of volunteers that they will be reaching out to. But we have what they call a P1 list, and that's essentially people that participated in reorganization. Those folks that participated in reorganization and we haven't seen them since the convention, we want to get them involved. We want to find out an area that they're comfortable with working in. So that's one thing we're going to do. The second thing that we're going to do is we have a list of data across the board from the South Carolina Republican Party of people that signed up for signs or signed up to assist our federal candidates, our state candidates in the 2020 cycle. So we want to build off of that base. I believe there's enough people there to really build a strong foundation. And then once we've successfully done that, we can, of course, expand from there. We receive regular updates from the state party of people who have recently moved to the area who have, stated they're interested in getting involved. So we need to make sure that we have all hands on deck because when we have a robust volunteer program, of course, we can ensure that they're successful. As far as it goes for training, we are going to be training our volunteers, but furthermore, we'd like to bring in people from the state party and from other Republican groups across the country to train our volunteers because we can have all the volunteers we want, but if they're not trained properly and aren't taught the effective ways in which to communicate our message and to really push our platform, then all of the volunteers, it's unnecessary. So we of course want to recruit volunteers, we want to train them, and that's something we're working on.
And how do you actually diverse the avenues of local outreach to increase the impact as well as the awareness of the Republican Party's presence in Dorchester County?
So two things that I ran on when I ran for chairman, and we're currently working on them. Number one is, of course, increasing our outreach to the minority community. And as we saw in 2020, President Trump received the most minority support of any president in over 50 years. And I believe the way he did that is he displayed tangible results, whether it was through criminal justice reform, whether it was through opportunity zones. So we have a minority outreach committee. Our chairman is very active in the community, who is working to bring our message to the minority community and ensure that they understand who we are and what our values are, because I believe that a lot of their values align with ours. But second, one thing that I ran on is community outreach and being active, charitable people in our community. So in the coming weeks, we're going to be announcing a community day. I expect our community outreach committee to have at least one community service day every quarter. And what we really want to do is have charitable giving in all of our meetings, where we will select a nonprofit organization to partner with, where people can bring donations. But most importantly, we want to be active in our community. We want people to understand that we care about them. We want to make the community better. And whether that's partnering with Habitat for Humanity and building a house for someone in need, or whether that is partnering with Katie's Crops that provides meals to the needy, we want to make sure that people understand we're not only interested in the political front, we're interested in making our community a better place in all areas.
Let me talk to you about something that's very obvious in Dorchester County, and that is growth. Where exactly would you expand the Dorchester County Republican Party membership in Dorchester County?
Well, one area that we really got to work on is what we call the western end of the county, and that's going to be basically from Ridgeville up to St. George. We have most of our unorganized precincts are going to be in that area. And so we are putting together a growth model that is going to work to recruit people to represent those precincts and, of course, grow the party. But like I said, one thing that we have to do, we are growing. And luckily, we have a robust SCGOP that sends us constant updates of new people that have moved to the area. We need to make sure that we are reaching out to those people. That's really the purpose of our executive committee men who represent each precinct, is to reach out to new people that move to their area. But it also helps when we build our digital presence, when we communicate what we believe online, when we're active on social media. And those are all goals that we plan to execute and things that I ran on and want to continue to improve upon.
Where exactly are those unorganized precincts in Dorchester County?
As I said, they're mainly, I don't have the names, but Ridgeville from Ridgeville to St. George. And the real reason for that is it's so rural. You have people that live miles apart. And so that's one area where we're working. We have support from county councilmen that live in that area who I believe will be able to help us to successfully recruit people to join the party that are in those areas. And that's one area that we have to do better in. And I believe one thing that we need to do, of course, is do some community activity out there that gets people interested, and then, of course, invite them to participate in our events.
Let me ask you this. Where have you identified any resources available on the state or national level and foster engagement between those organizations and local candidates to maximize their chances of success?
Quintin, that's a very good question. One thing that we have to do is collaborate with the state party. And with us establishing an office, we're going to try to make the case as to the state party supporting us in that effort. The state party, Drew McKissick, was recently reelected resoundingly. And the reason he was elected in such a fashion is because of his ability to work with the national level, the state level, and the local level. When we all work together and we don't try to duplicate resources, but instead work together, we can accomplish a lot of good, and we typically can accomplish it at a lower cost. And of course, campaigns, they cost money. So we want to make sure that any opportunity to partner with any group, whether it's national, state, or local, we accept that opportunity and work with them hand in hand.
Where in Dorchester County did you all gain the most increase as far as membership?
I would probably say the Somerville area, which is typically the most growing area of Dorchester County. They say in Charleston, there's, I think, 50 families moving there in the Charleston area a day. I'm sure that Dorchester County is a lot of that. And the reason is, of course, our school system is very good. People are attracted to that, but also our environment, our atmosphere here. We're very welcoming and hospitable. So Somerville is where we've seen the most growth, but we, of course, want to expand that growth across the entire county.
Where did you lose membership in Dorchester County?
So the good news is we really didn't. I believe our membership increased, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but across the state, we increased membership like 125 or 150%. I know that at the last reorganization, it wasn't a contested chairman's race. President Trump was in office, and as you know, typically when a political party's president is in office, voters get complacent. They're not that active, and so the participation last year was or the last reorganization was rather small. But to kind of illustrate this, our last meeting before the convention, we had 21 precincts represented, and my first meeting as chairman, we have 43 precincts represented. So we have grown tremendously. There really hasn't been a drop off, but of course we want to increase in the areas where our membership is lacking, and really that would be the upper part of the western end of the county.
How many minority members have you increased by?
I don't have that data in front of me, but that is certainly a goal that we're working on. That was one of the things I ran on. I believe if we communicate our message in an appropriate way, we can recruit more minority members. And that is something that we are laser focused on, ensuring that we get in every community, minority and others, to communicate our message in a positive way. Because the fact of the matter is, we've seen what the Biden agenda has gotten us over the last 6 months. It's gotten us higher inflation, which is a tax on the middle class. We have a border that is wide open and illegal immigration through the roof. We have all of these crises across the country, and that is only possible because of weak and ineffective Democrat leadership. So we need to make sure that we contrast ourselves with that record so that we can get support from every community.
Is there any weakness inside the Republican Party?
That's a great question. I think really what we have to do, and our only weakness, in my opinion, is really we need to ensure that we don't fight among ourselves. We need to make sure that we are working together in a collaborative way and realize that we are a big family and we're not going to agree on everything. But when it comes to nominating our people, and once they are nominated, the whole party needs to get behind them, whether we supported them or not, because ultimately we probably agree with that person more than we would the Democrat nominee.
How do you retain the party's loyalty with your leadership?
I think success. Really what it all comes down to is success. We need to make sure that we're working together in a collaborative way, and I think success will bring people together. I think success will grow the party, and I think that is the best way for us to grow and to come together, and for people to support me in the future, is by all of us working together successfully.
Let me get back to Washington for just a second. Do you believe that the Republican Party has been weakened by what happened at the Capitol on January 6th?
There's many people that say that. I think ultimately most voters are looking at their pocketbook. Most voters are looking at the real day impacts of the Democrat agenda right now. Most voters are looking at President Biden and saying, this guy ran as Mr. Bipartisanship, and he's not being bipartisan. In fact, everything that he's pushed thus far has been with one party rule. And so I think when voters go to the voting booth in 2022, they're not going to be so much focused on what happened on January 6th, as egregious as that was. They're going to be focused on the issues that matter to them at that time. And I believe that's why Republicans will win in 2022, because the Biden agenda has failed the American people, and I expect us to have a red wave then.
What is the Republican Party's agenda?
Our agenda is really lower taxes, smaller government. We saw the most robust and inclusive economy of a generation under President Trump. We saw minority unemployment and single-family unemployment at the lowest ever. And so our agenda is focused on families. Our agenda is focused on a strong foreign policy where we're not giving a pipeline to Russia. Our policies are focused on a strong border, because we know that border security is national security. And those are all the things that are important to our Republican Party. And I think that's going to resonate with the American people. Like I outlined earlier, inflation is a tax increase on the middle class, and inflation is the highest it's ever been right now.
Okay, you talked earlier about border security. What type of security should be happening at the United States Capitol in the future to make certain that what January 6th happened would never happen again?
Well, I think first and foremost, the Capitol Police need to be given the resources required to defend the Capitol. And, looking at this in hindsight, it's become rather clear that what happened on January 6th was premeditated among some groups. And the federal agencies charged with monitoring this type of activity knew about it. And so what we need to make sure is, number one, we're monitoring this information. And if there is a threat that is legitimate against the Capitol, that the Capitol has the resources required. I don't know if this is true, but many people have stated that Speaker Pelosi knew that there was a legitimate threat against the Capitol, and unfortunately, the resources were not provided to the Capitol. I've been to many different events at the Capitol, rallies and those types of things, and what I can say is the security that I saw on the news of the United States Capitol the day of January 6th seemed to be a little low. I don't know if that was on purpose, but we need to make sure that whenever anything is happening in Washington, that the Capitol Police and the other agencies charged with protecting the Capitol are given all the resources required.
And when did Leader McConnell learn anything about January 6th?
I'm sorry, you said when did Leader McConnell learn anything about January 6th?
Yes, sir.
So Leader McConnell was outspoken when January 6th occurred on the Senate floor that night. He was very direct in saying that he was not going to allow people storming the Capitol to stop the business of the day. And so he's been rather direct about what happened on January 6th, and I don't believe that he can be any more direct or any more stern in rebuking what happened and ensuring that it doesn't happen in the future.
And speaking in the future, who should be in that commission?
On the January 6th Commission?
Yes, sir.
Unfortunately, the January 6th Commission has turned into a partisan body. You saw Speaker Pelosi nominate all of her members. Leader McCarthy nominated his members, and then she rejected his members. We have people on this committee that rejected electors previously when a Republican president was elected, yet Speaker Pelosi doesn't want members that rejected the Democrat president. So I think, really what this is more political division. This committee is not going to tell us anything that we don't already know. We have federal agencies that are investigating this, and this is just more partisan divisiveness that the American people are not interested in. They would rather the Congress tackle issues that are facing us every day versus more political witch hunts.
What should they investigate more when it comes to January 6th?
They need to, if anything they need to investigate how it occurred. How is it that there were so many red flags and so much notification that this was a possibility to occur, and it still occurred? Who was it that allowed this to occur as far as the security that was not present? And those are the types of things that we need to investigate to ensure it does not happen again. I tell you, one thing that is disheartening to me is when people say that January 6th was the worst attack since the Civil War, or it was worse than 9/11. Those types of comments are not constructive and they're untrue. What happened on January 6th was disgraceful. I don't support it. I don't think we should ever allow it to happen again. But we need to make sure that we get to the bottom of how it happened. Because if we don't get to the bottom of how it happened and what security protocols were missed, then it could happen again. And we need to make sure that our Capitol, the beacon of the free world, is protected at all times.
And what are those red flags that you're still looking at right now?
Well, they're saying that and I don't know if this is true, but the news has reported that there were, explosive devices at the RNC. There were explosive devices around the Capitol. And so that is very clear that means this was premeditated. And if it was premeditated, what type of information did our federal agencies or local agencies have that could alert the Capitol Police? And if they had that information and it simply was disregarded, then there needs to be consequences. Whatever consequences that we have, they need to be followed through with.
And what are those ideal consequences, Mr. Steven?
That's up to our federal government to decide, but I think if a federal agency had information that this was a likelihood to occur and they just simply brushed it under the rug, I would think there's some type of criminal penalty for that or civil penalty. People were injured in this attack, and we need to ensure that in the future these types of things don't happen again, and that the Capitol Police have all the resources to make sure it doesn't happen.
And obviously, you've been in office as Dorchester County Party Chair for the Republican Party over 90 days. What can we expect from you in the next 60 days?
That's a great question. I'm actually going to be outlining that at our executive committee meeting. One thing that we need to focus on, number one, is successfully executing our Faith, Family, and Freedom Dinner. The second thing that we need to focus on, of course, is adopting our membership growth plan so that we build out the precincts that are unorganized right now and ensure that every precinct across Dorchester County is represented. I'm going to be establishing the Ways and Means Committee to kind of oversee the funds that we have and the way we spend it, and really getting all of our committees up and going and working in one direction so that we can have the maximum impact on the 2022 midterms.
Steven Wright of the Dorchester County Republican Party, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.